All right, CNT120, Chap1Lab. We're now looking at the upper layers on the OSI model. Typically, layers 5, 6, 7 kind of get lumped together because my application, if you remember my data, those top three layers are data. They're basically kind of like all together. So we're just going to handle the upper layers together, just like we would in the TCP/IP protocol stack that we saw. So we're now going to look at the HTTP data that's moving from computer to server and so forth. So if you close your sniffer, if you close your browser, we'll get those back open. I'm going to open the sniffer here. I'm going to open that back up. Again, you'll notice we're set for DNS, HTTP, ping, and TCP. That's what ICMP is, ping. I'm actually just going to clear the packets out. That way we have a clean buffer to look at here. You're welcome to do the same. And then I'm going to open I'll slide that over here for right now. I'm going to open the laptop, and I'm going to open its browser again. So I'm going to let that load. And while that's loading, I will slide my sniffer back over here. Here's my laptop. And there's my sniffer. I'll slide the sniffer over this way. I'll slide the browser this way. What we're going to do is, again, we're going to browse into CNT.org, the server that I have. We're going to let those packets load over here, and then we're going to take a look at those packets again, but more specifically the HTTP. Okay, so there's my sniffer. I got to get back to my laptop. Oh, get back there. There's the laptop. There's the sniffer. Okay, all right. So in my laptop, I'm going to open the web page again, www.cnt.org. We'll let that load. It loads quicker now because we've been there before. There's my web page that's loading. And then here's the traffic that moved through. Again, this is kind of a clean capture. We see the DNS packet first because it's requesting, hey, what's the address of this website? We see TCP getting run because we're trying to set up a connection to the web server. Then we have web traffic coming over, HTTP traffic coming over. Then we have TCP kind of closing down the session. That's what we're seeing. Well, this time through, let's take a look at the HTTP information. So I'm going to highlight an HTTP packet. I'm going to slide this over to make it a little bit wider. Again, we'll see source and destination. That's the MAC address of either the laptop or the server, then the laptop or the server. So we're going between the two. There's my Ethernet header. That's that first header that's on there. Next to that, we have the IP header with the source and destination IP address. Okay, source in this case is the laptop, destination is the server. Keep going, TCP. Source port is my browser. Destination port is 80, which is web traffic, HTTP. Excuse me. I'm going to keep going. Down here is the HTTP request. It says, hey, please give me your web page. So this is the request going over to the server. And the next HTTP packet, if I highlight that, I should see all the numbers flip-flop, and this should be the data coming back to my computer. Here is the server for the source IP. Here is the laptop for the destination IP. Source port coming from the web server, 80, coming to 1028, my browser. Again, that number could be 1028, 1029, 1030. Again, that's dynamic. It'll be 1,000 and something. All right. And then down here should be the HTTP data. And I do see that, and it's even closing down after that. But this is actually the HTTP data that got loaded into my browser over here. There's not much. You see the byte is not very large. But that is actually the web page coming to my computer. That was this, get back here, being displayed on my screen. That's what that was. That's what that HTTP data there was. That is that being displayed in my browser. So there we see the Ethernet, IP, TCP, and HTTP headers or portions of my data packet. This is the data encapsulation process they were talking about. Each step along the way adds a header so it is readable on the other end by that device. TCP, IP, Ethernet. And as I look at this, this packet sniffer was receiving it. So the first thing it tore off to look at was the Ethernet header. The next thing it tore off to look at was the IP header. The next thing it tore off to look at was the TCP header and then the HTTP data. So it was receiving it, so it was kind of tearing off the first header looking at, second header looking at, third header looking at, and so forth. That's what you're seeing on this packet capture. I'm seeing all those layers represented in these header formats. So hopefully the OSI model in this data sending process makes a little more sense. Before we leave layer 7, let's capture proof of us seeing the layer 7 data. So what we're going to do here, this is kind of the fun one. I'm going to highlight the data here, and I'm going to try to right click copy. You can do it. We'll do a Control C then. Control C or Command C. I'm not seeing my control click working. So I'm going to do Control C. If need be, we'll do right click. Yeah, the right clicks doesn't want to work right now. So we'll try the Control C or the Command C if you're on Apple. And then I'll go to my text file, and I'll put down here at the very bottom, I'll say this is my layer 7 data from HTTP server, something like that. That way I know what it is. I'm going to try to Control V or paste it in. And there it shows me it lost all the formatting, which is A-OK, but it shows this is the CNT120 HTTP server. Welcome to the server of Chap1Lab, blah, 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 blah. Onions have layers too, Shrek. If you haven't been thinking Shrek and onions and layers in this chapter, I don't know. That's one of the first things that always pops into my head when I start talking layers. All right, I'm going to save that text file, make sure that's saved. I'll save my packet tracer file here so I don't lose my progress. And I'm going to look down here. I have just a reminder of the layers and what we did. Layer 1 was that physical connection like the package cable that we dealt with. Layer 2 was the network card that we put in. And then when that was installed, we looked at the MAC address. The MAC address is showing us that the network card is there and working. Layer 3 was all about addressing and moving traffic, so we looked at the IP address and we even did a ping to prove that traffic was moving from computer to computer. Layer 4, we spent time looking at the port numbers. In this case, it was the TCP port numbers from my computer and the web server. So, you know, my browser 1028 or whatever it was, and the server 80, the web server 80. We were looking at those port numbers. That's your layer 4 addressing. And then the upper layers, as long as I was able to get my data from the web server, that application data, then I know the upper layers were functioning correctly. We just copied the data from the web server that we saw. That was our proof of that working. So if I'm able to load a web page, I know that my upper layers are working, and that's proof that my upper layers are working. So what you do now is just make sure you have all those pieces. So this would be a good time to pull up your text file and just kind of scroll through and make sure I have the layer 2 MAC address. Yep. I have the IP address from my laptop. Yep, that's that right there. I have the ping there as well. I have the port numbers, and then I have the data from the web server. Bada bing, bada boom. I'll save this file, and at this point, we're going to save that text file, and we're going to submit it to D2L. I can close out my direction file. I'll save my packet tracer file. That way you have it in case you need to revisit it. And what I'll do on D2L here is I'll go to the Dropbox folder, and I'll open the Chap1Lab. Okay, I'll open the Chap1Lab. Let me see if I can get this to be preview like you guys would see. And I'll open the Chap1Lab, and in here, I'll scroll down to add a file, and I will browse for that text file. I can either drag it into here. Okay, that might be the easy route. Here is my lab folder. Here's my chapter 1 text file. I can drag that in here. That was probably the easy way. Or if I click upload, I just browse for that file. In this case, I'd go to my documents. Here's my 120 class. I go to the Chap1Lab, and then there's the text file. And I could say add that in or open that in. Open that, it'll load it there, and then I can do add. And then the only thing left to do is submit that guy. And the Chap1Lab is done. I don't actually need the packet tracer file, but you can include it there if you want to. That way you have it there as like, I'm not going to submit mine. You'll want to do that. You'll want to submit. I'm not going to submit mine. You can include it if you want, but I don't need the packet tracer file. But you probably should keep it with your lab files as a just in case you need to revisit it. So there is the last part of the Chapter 1 lab.